Hello, welcome to One Rake at a Time. I'm your host, Art Jones, and today I have a very, very special guest with me. I have the mayor of the city of Crystal River with me, Jim Farley.
Hi, Art. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here. And Jim, can you, just to start out the show, some of the audience that doesn't live in Crystal River may not know your background as well as I do. Could you briefly tell the audience a little bit of your background and how you came to Crystal River and became our mayor?
Sure. Actually, I originally came to Crystal River in about 1980, just on an overnighter to check on some property that was up here. And I didn't even realize at that time there was a bay.
Imagine that.
Going up and down Highway 19, it's not readily apparent that it's a bay. But then I came here to settle in 1999 because I was offered the position of chief of police.
Okay, so you had a job transfer here as chief of police. Okay, great.
I came here as chief of police, which I served in that capacity for 4 years, and retired from that and ran for city council. Did 3 years on city council, and then ran for mayor. And this is my second term as mayor.
Yes, and speaking personally, we just love you being our mayor.
Thank you.
You're a fantastic
I love being your mayor.
You do, and that's
yeah.
part of it. You got to like the job. Why do it if you're not having fun?
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about the One Rake at a Time project a little bit, because I know it's very important to our city and our county and the people that visit.
Right.
And can you describe how you've seen the bay and how you saw it when you first came here, and maybe you've seen some improvements as we've been working on this?
I can tell you that it is better now than when I first came here. I think the One Rake at a Time is definitely having a positive impact on the bay. I've heard many residents tell me how much better it is, and I'm confident that as this project grows, it's going to expand to other areas. It's already expanded to Homosassa, and I'm sure it's going to catch on a statewide basis. You've gotten the attention of at least one state senator, Charlie Dean, who's been working hard to get funding for it.
Yeah.
And I'm very confident in the future of this project.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how it really has taken off? I am just amazed at the amount of wonderful people who come out and help every time we do a cleanup, because it's not easy work cleaning up. I mean, we've learned we only schedule those volunteer cleanups for 2 hours because it is physically hard work. And when I look back at my lists of volunteers that have come out, we've had over 1,000 people from our community come out and help at one time or another.
Yeah, and you know, I've said to you that I wish that I could do it, but unfortunately my back is not what it used to be, and I can't do that kind of physical work, so I got to support you in other ways. But I really kind of wish that I was young enough, my back is strong enough that I could do it, because I think it's great for a young person to get out there in the sunshine and in Florida. I mean, this is paradise. It's another day in paradise today, in the water, and just really enjoy the outdoors, and while accomplishing something good, and in some cases getting paid for doing it.
Yeah, it is amazing. In fact, we started this project in '09. It was my leadership citrus class project, and we had talked to Andy Houston about maybe cleaning the swimming area up for the kids. And I think at that time we didn't really realize how involved this was going to become. We thought, and Andy thought the same thing, you just go in and you know, a weekend, clean up the swimming area for the kids, you're done. And we went in there one weekend and we pulled out a lot of lingua, and then I said, well, there's still some left, let's schedule it for another weekend. And so we went for another weekend, and more people showed up to help. And then there was still lingua left, because what happened is the lingua was just so deep that you thought you were taking it off the bottom, but you weren't. It was just all locked in the silt. And so then we did it a third weekend, and then Andy Houston says, he goes, Art, he goes, I thought there was just going to be one weekend. He says, what happened? And I said, well, Andy, there's a lot more lingua out there than I thought.
Well, I have to share a story with your viewers, and you've heard this before because you and I went to Tallahassee at one time to talk to Senator Dean about getting some funding.
That's right.
And what I told him is, when you first approached the city council with this concept, I thought to myself, it's never going to work. It's just never going to work. I'll support it because at least it's somebody trying to do something, but it's not going to work. And I told Senator Dean, I'll tell your viewers now, I was wrong. it is working, and I think it's great.
It is really working. And that's the difference between that incremental improvement week after week after week, and then 3 years later, oh my gosh, look at what we've done.
Yeah,
It
and
is
something we
amazing.
talked about a little earlier. On?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's on.
We talked about a little earlier is that people say, well, it's going to come back, it's going to come back. But as you mentioned, if you get the right balance of natural grasses to replace it, it's going to be strong enough to overcome Lingbia, and the
Yeah.
Lingbia won't come back. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's our audience is showing some of the volunteers cleaning that up. And that's what's happening is in fact, we were just out there. I had, it's interesting that we started this with Leadership Citrus, and just yesterday we had Youth Leadership Citrus come out to Hunter Springs. And this is a group of high school students now. Leadership Citrus is more for adults
Right.
in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that want to become leaders of the community. Well, they started a Youth Leadership Citrus program, and they came out yesterday to Hunter Springs Park, and they were just all ears and just fascinated about this project. And they all are ready to get in and help with the volunteer effort.
I think that's the thing, is to start with the younger people.
Yeah.
You know, if we can get younger people, a lot of times younger people are just not aware of things like that.
Yeah.
If you can get their attention and get their interest, then they're going to pass it on. They're going to grow up with that mission in mind, and they're going to pass it on to other children.
Yeah, and it was beautiful because we went out into the water, and it was a high tide then, so we really couldn't do a cleanup for them, but I brought my rake out so I could demonstrate it. And when we raked the bottom, there was only like maybe an inch of Lingbia on the bottom, and there was that beautiful white sand. And you know, that goes back to my memory of the first time we were doing the cleanup. We had people in waders because it was so mucky, and we put them in full waders to get in there.
Right.
We had wetsuits and all sorts of things, and boots and everything, and now, you know, you've just got a little bit left there. So we're always going to need to maintain it, and that's one of the beautiful things about the program is that we will maintain it because we're the ones that cleaned it up. So we're not going to walk away from it because we live here.
Right.
Right? This is for our community and our kids and stuff. And more people are coming on board. And I've got something else to talk about the audience in the next segment. It's called Living Shorelines. I was just at a meeting called the Kings Bay Working Group on, was it Monday or Tuesday? Anyway, all the agencies get together. And no, it was actually Tuesday morning. And anyway, all the agencies, FWC, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, get together and they talk about other things that we can do to make sure that as we're cleaning up the bay stays clean. And one of that is living shorelines. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Welcome back to One Rake at a Time. I'm your host, Art Jones, and today with me is my very special guest, Jim Farley, the mayor of Crystal River. And we were just saying we're going to talk about the living shorelines. So I was saying I was at a Kings Bay working group, and we're in discussions with SwiftMud and stuff on how to make sure that the cleanup that we're doing gets a real chance to outcompete that Lingbia. And one of the things is beneficial plants. And this is just an amazing bag here. And I don't know if you've ever seen this before, Jim, but
I have not.
It's only that big, and it's all sewed up on either side. So you've got one opening here, and you can fill it up. So what we can do is we can fill this up with sand and Lingbia, and then you tie it at the top, and so it'll become like a big sandbag. You know, the sandbags we can pick up at City Hall when we have a flood or something like that. It's almost the same thing. And if you feel that material, it looks like it might fall apart, but these are actually guaranteed for 50 years. So this is a special material designed specifically for living shorelines. And you can almost see a little bit of light through there. Mm-hmm. And that allows the plant roots to go into it.
Now, you had told me earlier, just so everybody understands, when you say that Lingbia goes into that, that's the composted Lingbia that you've already harvested out of the bay. And
Correct.
It's dried out.
Correct.
So
This
there's
is
no
all
danger it's coming back.
right. This is all the dry, dead, composted Lingbia. And we drove by that
Yes, we
on
did.
our way here this morning. And were you impressed at how big that pile was?
I was.
That's a big pile.
It's hard to believe that just individuals with rakes can get out there and hand harvest all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty amazing. Yeah, the majority of that was hand raked out. We had some machine stuff dumped there, but the majority was our hard back-breaking work.
Yes.
And so, yeah, and if you look at that, if we had stopped and actually got into it, as we pull out that Lingbia, there are sediments in there and silt and stuff. So there's some little small particles of sand and things. So if we mix that, normally when they do a living shoreline, they just fill these with sand, so it's almost like a sandbag. The biggest difference is the roots can go in there, and then they'll build a seawall or something where the shoreline is eroded, and then they'll put plants. They'll put one sack in after another, and they use these little spikes here to put in between, and they'll haul them in place, and then they'll put a plant, and they'll stick its roots in between there, and it'll grow. Of course, when you're just using sand, they don't really grow as much as you'd like them to. So if we can put in a little bit of Lingbia in here, say 40 or 50% of that dried composted Lingbia in there and mix it with the sand, now you can stack these bags up along the shoreline where you want to create that living shoreline, and you have a natural fertilizer already locked inside of that.
And as I understand it, it's the roots of those plants that go into the sand that help anchor the shoreline and prevent further erosion. Is that right?
Correct. These are going to be anchored in place, and these bags are good for 50 years. And then as those plants grow out over the years, by the time these deteriorate, that's just going to be solid root. And you're right, those roots have gone all the way through them and in there, and you've got this natural shoreline there.
And it's so much better that it's natural rather than seawall or riprap or anything like that that's not natural, and it tends to, over time, break down.
Correct. And the plants that we can plant in there, and at the meeting there was a whole list of different plants that we can plant along the shoreline. That's going to help take the nutrients out of the bay. That's going to help create that fish habitat, and put oxygen back into the bay. That's going to help clarify the water because it's constantly filtering it. So one of our goals with the one rake at a time effort is if we take enough Lingbia out of the bay and we can get enough good beneficial SAB growing, we can outcompete that Lingbia. Because Lingbia hoards nutrients. So Lingbia likes water that's really polluted, and they like, and it'll die, and it just grows on itself. But if you've got taken out enough of it, and now you've got good plants growing that are using those nutrients first, because like eelgrass, it doesn't need a lot of nitrogen, it doesn't need a lot of phosphorus. It can grow quite nicely without a lot. So it can outcompete the Lingbia. And so then the Lingbia is going to say, wait a minute, where's my food source? And it won't be able to grow. So that's the beauty of these. I'm very excited about it. In fact, I'm going down to Rutskin, which is out on the other side of Tampa Bay, on Thursday, and see if I can pick up a couple hundred of these bags. And what we're going to try to do is take that dried Lingbia over there at that dump site and just shovel it into these bags with some sand, mix it up, and then we're going to do some little experimenting until we get the right blend with it. And that's something that SwiftMud is going to be doing at Hunter Springs Park.
Springs.
Yeah. So it's kind of neat the way it just keeps coming full circle. It's the whole community working together. The city's got Hunter Springs Park, which has some erosion issues. Mm-hmm. SwiftMud is interested in improving water quality. The One Rake at a Time project, we have a lot of volunteers and people that want to see the park helped and the water cleaned up. So we're all working together on that.
I think it's great. I can't wait till you get started.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We're just waiting now. I asked SwiftMud yesterday morning, I said, well, what's the holdup? And they said, well, we're still waiting to get the right permits. And so we got in an interesting discussion about permitting, and one of the permits that they needed to get for some of the living shoreline is an Army Corps of Engineer permit. And that kind of was scaring most people off. Oh, an Army Corps permit. Ouch. So we talked to the DEP lady there a little bit, and we're hoping that if we can become completely satisfied with what we're doing with the experiments around Hunter Springs Park, that we can sort of create a template of something a homeowner can do. So we'll have a diagram. If you do it just like that, then DEP says that maybe they can issue an exemption so that a homeowner can do it without having to go get all those permits. So if a homeowner's going to do it just exactly like we figured out how to do it the best way, then skip the permits and then we can really get this thing
Well,
rolling.
you know, that'd be great because permitting is so daunting to government. There's so many different agencies that you have to get permits from to take on projects like restoring and cleaning up the bay. Homeowners just wouldn't be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
So if you can do what you said, have a template that can be applied to individual homeowners where, say, the permit covers them, fantastic.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? So we're hoping for the best. And like I said, I'm going to run down to Rutskin Thursday and see if I can pick up some more bags. And we've got a lot of neat little places to get going on that. So exciting stuff. We're going to get that bay cleaned up. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. So stay tuned. Art Jones, one rake at a time. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to One Rake at a Time. I'm your host, Art Jones, and today, my guest today is the Mayor of Crystal River, Jim Farley. Once again, welcome.
Thank you.
And we were just talking about the living shoreline and a little bit about grants. And did you have a question for me, Jim?
Well, before we get to the grants, I did. I understand that you have both volunteer workers, and quite a few of them that come and go, but you also have some that are paid workers. How does that all work?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Basically what it is, when we do a volunteer cleanup, we just about always do it at Hunter Springs Park. And the reason we do it at Hunter Springs Park is when you're dealing with volunteers, you can have volunteers. Some of our volunteers are kids. I mean, 10 years old, they come out with their parents. Some of our volunteers are middle-aged, some of them are elderly. And you really, when you're dealing with volunteers, you want to be able to keep your eye on them at all times. You want to be able to provide them bathroom facilities if they need it. You want to make sure that you know, that they're going to be safe, and you get them all signed in and everything, and you want to make sure that they're not in any situation that may be a little bit dangerous. So you want to know what's there on the beach, and we've pretty much cleaned that beach area there at Hunter Springs a lot. So that's where we just about always do our volunteer cleanups. Now, when we go for the paid hand rakers and in the volunteer cleanups, we just concentrate on there. And people can earn community hours, so some people get paid in a way like that. The kids that need that scholarship program in school and stuff like that. And then we have another program of paid hand rakers, and that has been funded by money that we've raised through, say, the Stone Crab Jam, or we got a grant from NOAA that the city went in on us with. The city put in some money, NOAA put in some money, Rotarians put in the volunteer hours. So it was everybody coming together to get that grant. And the way the paid hand raking works is that we work over in Cedar Cove right now. And that's a little bit more dangerous, and sometimes, you know, you're out of sight. And what we do there is we have pontoon barges where people physically use pitchforks and rake it up onto the pontoon barge, and they basically have to sink that pontoon barge to where the pontoons are below the water line, and then they bring it into shore, and then they have to physically pitchfork that into a trailer, and then the trailer guy takes it off and dumps it at our dump site that you saw earlier where it all piles up. So that is a lot of work, and we do that almost every day that the tides are right when we have grant money to spend on that. And we took out over 1,200 tons by hand with that paid hand raking. So this is a way for some of our young people. I have a 20-year-olds, I have a 30-year-old, and these are the way for some of our strong individuals in our community to get a good job and do it. And everything's based on cubic footage. So we pay them $2.77 a cubic foot. And trust me, they earn it.
No, I believe it. I've seen them.
That is hard work. So they're two separate things. But sometimes people will come out and they'll volunteer and they'll say, Art, I want to help with you, and they'll volunteer to work with the paid hand rakers for a day or so. And to tell you the truth, usually when they volunteer and work with the paid hand rakers, about halfway through they're like, that's enough. I'm like, okay, you can go home.
And from what I've heard, you don't have to go out and recruit people, that they contact you. And it spreads by word of mouth from one worker to another.
Yes, yeah, absolutely right. I've never had to place an ad in the paper. People contact me. I've got a list of people waiting for the opportunity, and I always tell them, if you're going to do it, if you're going to do the paid hand raking program, you have to volunteer a day first with the crew. And the crew has to give the go-ahead that this is going to be a strong person that can pull their own weight, because we divide everything up evenly among the crew. So if you've got 3 guys working and they earn $200, everybody divides that up evenly. So they want to make sure that it's a strong crew member for that.
Right.
But it's extremely successful. You've seen what's been going on in Cedar Cove. I mean, it's a miracle what's happened there. We had that old boat ramp that there was another place where I had to wear waders. When I got in there, it was just pure muck. And now it's becoming a beautiful swimming hole, becoming a blue hole. And it's kind of exciting to see that. And the water clarity is improving. And we've worked our way out we're way out in the middle of Cedar Cove. And we're working our way out along where the city wants to put in the Riverwalk.
Yes, you are. I know you want to tell everybody about the latest grant.
Yes.
That the city just...
Yeah, we just used up all our grant. We had a grant from NOAA, Beaches and Mines, and we had a grant from Duke Energy, and then we had monies that we had raised through different parties and events with Rotary. And we just got word that we're getting a new grant, and the city, thank you very much, is going to kick in $10,000 for that grant, and then the county is going to kick in another $50,000, and then Swift Mud is going to match that. So now we have another $120,000 so we can get the paid hand rakers back to work.
Right. The city was actually contacted both the Board of County Commissioners and SwiftMud and asked to do this, making clear that it was only for hand raking, not for mechanical harvesting, but for hand raking. Right. And they asked us to, and they said that the city did not have to put up any money. They would go ahead and do it anyway, right. But if the city wanted to. So our city council met and discussed it and said, yeah, we do want to match that. So we're putting in $10,000 this year and another $10,000 next year.
Yeah, and thank you very much. That was wonderful. And it was really wonderful to see it unanimous.
Well, it's good for the city too, because the terms of this grant are the city determines, it only works in the city.
Right.
It's not going outside the city, but the city determines what parts of the city, what parts of the waterways that we want it to happen.
Yeah.
And I think pretty much the city's going to leave it up to you, but no, there'll be some discussion on that.
Yeah, and I think the city is very appreciative of what we're doing in Cedar Cove.
Absolutely.
Because that's where the Riverwalk wants to go. So that is an amazing thing. And the reason we were targeting that grant just for hand raking is we had gotten a grant earlier of $225,000 from the county that's for mechanical and things like that. And we still have money over there to use for that. So it's really neat that we're getting all these complementary things going on, because the hand raking gets in those shallow areas, and it can get in areas where no machine can go. And then machines can do where really there's just too much for hand rakers to do, so it can do some of the heavy lifting. And then hopefully we're working on diver vacuum machines and things like that. So between vacuuming and mechanical harvesting and hand raking and then planting the eelgrass and out competing it, I have high hopes that, as we keep going, we've already seen it improving. I think that another 3, 4, 5 years, it's just going to keep getting better and better and better.
And anybody that wants to be involved can in some capacity with your group, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Whenever we have a volunteer cleanup, we invite everyone to come work out. And if they think they're interested in the paid hand raking program, we can give them a shot at that too as we get up and going again.
Great.
So yeah, a lot of good things coming. So thank you very much for watching today. We love the support that we're getting from the audience out there. This is Art Jones with One Rake at a Time. We'll see you next month.